front. Talks to Caulfield. Fire. Scores!
You are about to enter Habs After Dark with Recliner Sports.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Good evening, gang. Welcome to the Halley Tiki Room. My name is Devin. This is Recliner Sports, and this is Habs After Dark. Relax. Relax, guys. This isn't the end of the world. It's 3 games in a row, okay? They've lost 3 games in a row. It's not the end of the world. They did not play badly tonight. They did not play well tonight, but they did not play badly tonight. They did not play as badly as they did in the previous game. Pardon me. They did not play as badly as they did in the game on Thursday. Again, they didn't play that bad against the Kraken. So these are not panic times. I know that as Montreal Canadiens fans, it's what we do. We panic. So welcome to Habs After Dark. The Montreal Canadiens suffer another loss. This time it is a 3-1 loss, even though I wrote 3-2 on the box score tonight. It was a 3-1 loss. But we're not panicking. It's not panic time. Montreal fans love to panic. The world is coming to an end, right? The Canadiens lose. This is what we expected from this team. They're young. They're developing. It's a rebuild. They're struggling. There's growing pains. It's going to happen. There's no need to panic. We can talk about the hit by Achari in a bit, Hunter. We'll get there. We'll get to the refereeing in general. This is not panic time, guys. So let's just relax. Let's have a deep breath, and let's talk about the game, okay? Yes, the Canadiens have lost 3 games in a row, but it's not the end of the world. Would it have been better if they had won 3 games in a row? Absolutely. But it is not the end of the world. So let's go through the game quickly, and then let's talk in the comments, and let's see if we can't get our issues off our chest and see if we can't figure out what's going on here. So let's go to the box score. There's our box score. So the game opens with a goal from Sidney Crosby. First period, Montreal and Pittsburgh are kind of feeling each other out. There's not a lot going on. It's a pretty quiet period. There's not a ton of action. There's not much, especially early on in the period. What are the stats? Shots are 5-5, so there's only 10 shots in the entire period. High danger scoring chances, 2 for Pittsburgh, 1 for Montreal, so pretty even that way. And expected goals for 0.4 for Pittsburgh, 0.25 for Montreal. Again, everything's pretty even. Neither team really did a whole lot in the first period. Again, I felt like they were feeling each other out. 2 teams that have been struggling. And I don't think Montreal played badly. I don't think they played great. But it was a tentative period. Everyone seemed to be on their tippy toes and trying to figure out what they were going to do. The goal, 15:57, late in the first period. Crosby scores a goal. The Canadiens have a hard time clearing the puck. Mike Matheson turns over the puck. He's trying to get the puck out along the boards. He can't do it. That was a bit of a theme in the game tonight, I thought. Montreal really struggling with their breakout. The puck ends up on Raquel's stick. He passes it across to Crosby in the high slot. And Crosby with, a Sidney Crosby shot beats Montembeault high on the stick side. Not a whole lot he could do. So then we go to the second period. We'll talk about the refereeing after. If you want to get upset about something, let's get upset about the refereeing. Second period's a little bit of a different story. There's a little bit more action. The teams are putting a little bit more offense. I think the Canadiens struggled a little bit in the second period. Pittsburgh outshot them 16-10. High danger scoring chances. Montreal actually out scoring chance. They had 6, whereas Pittsburgh only had 5. This is all according to Natural Stat Trick, by the way. Expected goals for Pittsburgh had 1.44 and Montreal had 1.12. That brought Pittsburgh to 1.84 for the game and 1.37 for Montreal for the entire game. This period, another goal by Pittsburgh. Again, Montreal's holding their own, but again, late in the period, they give up another goal. Again, Sid the Kid, right? The Montreal Canadiens killer. Crosby from Letang and Carlson. There's a bit of a battle up around the blue line. Letang is battling with Suzuki. Suzuki loses his stick. As a result, Letang wins the battle. He feeds Crosby, and then again, Crosby with another wrist shot from the high slot. This time, it's through traffic. Montembeault can't see the puck, and the puck beats him, and it's 2-0. So at this point, Montreal has played a pretty even game with Pittsburgh. Again, neither team I don't think played particularly well, but again, I think that they were certainly right with Pittsburgh at this point. But unfortunately, at this point now they're down 2-0. That second goal, by the way, was a power play goal scored while David Savard was in the penalty box for a really, really tough delay of game penalty. Really, that delay of game penalty to me. I've always found it weird. I mean, back in the day, if you guys are old enough to remember, the delay of the game penalty was a judgment call, and the referees had judgment discretion to determine whether or not they felt like shooting the puck over the glass was intentional or not. Eventually, the league got to the point where they took that discretion away from the referees, and now if it goes over the glass, regardless, it's a delay of game. And the reality is a lot of the times, most of the times, when guys are shooting the puck over the glass, it's not intentional by any means. And this was a situation where I think that if you put the puck down on the ice in the position where David Savard shot that puck from, I don't think there's very many guys in the NHL that could put more than 3 or 4 out of 10 over the glass intentionally from that position, even if they were just sitting there, in practice doing that without, anybody around them. So anyways, it was a tough call. It resulted in a goal. It is what it is. Third period, Montreal dominated the third period. The shots were 11-3 for Montreal. They finished the game with a 26-24 advantage in shots. High danger scoring chances. Montreal had 6, Pittsburgh had 5. The teams ended with 7 each in the game. Those are, again, not good numbers for either team, but again, they're pretty even numbers. And the expected goals for Pittsburgh were 1.44. And for Montreal, it was 1.12. Again, 1.84 for the entire game. Let's actually go look at that to be sure I got that right. I may not have that right. Let's just check to get this right. So in the third period, the high danger scoring chances were 2-2, and it was 9-7 for the game in favor of Pittsburgh. And expected goals for were 0.38 for Pittsburgh in the third period and 1.08 for Montreal, 2.02 for the game for Montreal, and 1.85 for the game for Pittsburgh. Montreal does manage to get on the board in the third period. Again, it's everybody's whipping boy, right? Everybody's favorite whipping boy this week has been Christian Dvorak. Everyone thinks that Christian Dvorak needs to go. He's the worst thing in the world. He's the worst player since, Scott Gomez. Like, he's got to go. Everyone's trying to run him out of town, but he had a pretty good game tonight. Looked pretty good out there. He arguably one of the team. Well, I think not arguably. I think he definitely was one of the team's best players. He scores a goal at the 5:32 mark. So the Canadiens are back in the game. It's 2-1. He scores on a goal assisted by Heineman and Slavkovsky. Slavkovsky creates a turnover along the boards. The puck ends up with Heineman. Heineman passes across to the high slot to Dvorak. Dvorak shoots on Nedeljkovic. Nedeljkovic makes the save, and Dvorak follows up, gets his own rebound, and he scores the goal. Unfortunately, the Canadiens weren't able to do anything further beyond that, and they couldn't score any more goals. And Blake Lizotte finishes the game off with 19-15 on an empty net goal from Lars Eller. Again, I don't like to dump hate on Mike Matheson because I think he gets a lot of undeserved attention in that way. But, not a great play by Mike Matheson to lead to that empty net goal. The Canadiens are putting on a little bit of pressure against Pittsburgh in that last little bit with the extra man on the ice. and Matheson with a really, really bad turnover. Lane Hudson does a great job to hustle to get the puck back, but then they kind of bobble the puck again, and Eller feeds Lizotte, and Lizotte goes in and scores the empty net goal. Game's over. It is a 3-2 final, 3-1 final, pardon me, despite what I've marked on the box score, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, we'll talk a little bit in a second here, guys, about the refereeing and the game itself. We'll get into the comments, but just give me a second here. We'll go now to briefly. We'll talk about the A team, tonight's A team. Again, I don't think anybody really had a great game tonight. I thought it was pretty, uneventful for both teams. I don't think either team really had a ton of jump out there tonight. But I've got Christian Dvorak, Juraj Slafkovsky, Caden Gooley, and Jaden Struble. I thought those were the four guys who stood out for Montreal tonight. Dvorak, I think, was the best player on the ice for Montreal. Even before he scored the goal in the third period, I had him down as one of the better players. His expected goal percentage was the best on the team. I felt like he was hustling right from the very beginning of the game. He was skating. He was in the game. He was hustling. He was getting his job done. I think, of all the players, he's the one who appeared to have, taken in the message that Marty St. Louis was dishing out over the last couple of days. He's the one who took it on board the most. Juraj Slafkovsky, again, I think he's just been steady all year long, right? He hasn't been spectacular, but he's been steady all year round. I thought he was very good again tonight. Caden Gooley, again, it's nice to see him back in the lineup. It's always nice to have him in there. He's a steady force back there, and I think he's giving us a good taste of what we're going to get from him for years to come. Steady defense-first defenseman who hopefully will, maybe develop a little bit more of his offensive game, but he's blocking shots. And he's playing that role that's been given to like a David Savard and a Mike Matheson. Like he's that steady defensive guy who you can put out there with, some of the younger defensemen just to give, a bit of an anchor so that they can, do their own thing. And Jaden Struble, I thought Jaden Struble played really well tonight. I thought Struble and Jack-Eye both played well together tonight. But Struble especially, I thought had a good game. The fight at the end. Obviously, I don't know that he won that fight. I think that Graves might have got the better of him a little. That was more of a wrestling match than anything else. But yeah, it was really I was really kind of Dvorak. If I have one complaint for Dvorak tonight, it was that Jack-Eye had a hold of Achari, and then Dvorak jumped on Achari's back and kind of pulled him away from Jack-Eye. I kind of wish he had just left him alone so that Jack-Eye could have done his own thing. So that's my A team for tonight. Again, I don't think anybody was spectacular tonight by any means. Dvorak, I do think was clearly to me the best player on the team, and I thought he played quite well, despite all of the negative attention he's been getting the last week or so. So next we move on quickly. We'll go to the report card. The report card is our version of whether we think the Canadiens had a good game or not. The report card is not great, but I don't think it's terrible either. They obviously, I screwed up the report card. So I said that they scored 3 or more goals. Well, they didn't. So there should be an X there next to scored 3 goals or more. So let's just pretend that that's an X. Allowed 3 or fewer goals. They did manage that tonight. The special teams tonight, I believe they allowed a power play goal and they didn't score any power play goals tonight, so I'm giving them a failing grade there. Consistent effort and compete, I don't think I can give them that. I don't think there was a consistent effort there tonight. I do think it's something that they're working on. The mental side of the game, it does need some work, and they are working on it, but I don't think it was there tonight. Discipline, again, I had no problem with their discipline. I thought they stayed out of the penalty box. I don't think they did anything real stupid tonight. In particular, I thought Jack-Eye was on his best behavior, despite the fact that Michael Bunting took perhaps the greatest dive I've seen since Greg Louganis at the 1996 Olympics, on what he pretended was a spear. He takes a big hack at Sam Montembeault's glove after the whistle, and Jack-Eye kind of slaps him with the open blade of his stick, and he goes down as if he was pitchforked with a pickaxe swung by Juan Soto in the World Series. I mean, it was just absolutely a joke, and Michael Bunting should be embarrassed for himself to be doing something like that. It was just a disaster and an embarrassment to see Bunting do that. So all that to say that I thought that Jack-Eye was on his best behavior tonight. Early in the game you saw him, he cleared Bunting out of the front of the net, but he didn't engage in any of the other business. He did get after Achari at the end of the game. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to execute, probably what he really wanted to. I didn't see what the penalties were actually at the end of the game. Maybe I can check that in a second. So at the end of the game, what did the penalties end up? So the penalties at the 20-minute mark were Jack-Eye for cross-checking. Achari for roughing. Jack-Eye for cross-checking. Jack-Eye for roughing. Struble for fighting, and Graves for fighting. So, of course, the referees gave Arbor Jack-Eye the extra penalty. You knew that they would. That's how they kind of behave themselves and conduct themselves, which I think is a really good segue into talking about the referees. So I'm going to talk about the referees tonight because I think it's an important thing. As far as the game goes, I don't think the Canadiens played well. I don't think they played badly. It was a mediocre game on their part. It was better than their last game. It was probably better than the Kraken game. The Kraken game, despite the 8-2 score, I don't think the Canadiens played all that badly, to be quite honest with you. The game on Thursday, obviously, they didn't play very well. They were kind of dominated in every aspect of the game. But tonight, I don't think they were that bad. Again, they didn't do a ton, but neither did Pittsburgh, and they were kind of in the game till the very end. But the refereeing, can somebody please tell me what in the holy hell fuck is a penalty in the NHL anymore? The last game, we're watching the game, and if you guys remember it, any time a player took his hand off his stick and just laid it on the hip of another player, he was called for a penalty, right? Everything was a penalty in the last game. Tonight, I've got in my notes here, in the third period alone, Achari buries Brendan Gallagher into the net, right? So Gallagher's at the front of the net, and Achari just drives him into the crossbar and into the post, into another player, and just buries him with a cross-check. No call. Nothing. A few minutes later, Achari goes into the corner with Juraj Slafkovsky, and he drives his shoulder into Slafkovsky's head. Now, was Slafkovsky standing still? And, it wasn't, it was a little bit different than the Trouba situation we had last week. But again, it's head contact. It's head contact. Clear through and through, no debating it, whatever. No calls at all from the referee. There was another point earlier in the third period where Slafkovsky's going to the front of the net, and the Pittsburgh player, literally tackles him. Full on tackles him, football tackles him. Would have looked just fine in the NFL. No penalty. In the second period, what do we have here? I don't have anything marked down in the Oh, yeah. Again, in the second period, Puustinen is in the penalty box for tripping. Slafkovsky is in front of the net. He's playing the bumper position. Fully tackled. No penalty. Later in that same power play, Brendan Gallagher is skating across the middle of the ice. And again, not a major penalty, but, the Pittsburgh player's stick gets caught up in Gallagher's skates. He goes down. No penalty. We've been told that's a penalty, right? If you get your stick inside somebody's skates, regardless of whether you're doing it intentionally or not, and he goes down, that's going to be a penalty. It certainly was a penalty in the last game. Everything was a penalty in the last game. Not tonight. First period, Josh Anderson's hit from behind. Just in the neutral zone along the boards, no call. There was a clear hooking on Kirby Dach that would have been called the other night, not called tonight. So I just don't understand what is going on with these referees. What are they trying to accomplish? What are they doing? And so you get that fight at the end of the game. You get that rumble at the end of the game, and everyone will say, oh, lack of discipline, whatever. The referees created that, right? The referees created that because they didn't do their job. They didn't do their job, so the players felt like they had to do the job for them, right? That's what causes, when these referees think that they're managing a game by evening out all of the penalties and making sure they don't call too many penalties against one team and that they call, the same amount of penalties against both teams. And then, when the game gets close at the end of the game, they just stop calling penalties because they feel like they don't want to influence the game and whatever. That's not game management, right? That's the kind of game management that results in, in a bit of a line brawl like they had at the end of the game. And all of a sudden now, guys on the Canadiens are getting, it's just the refereeing is absolutely atrocious. And if the referees had done their job tonight, I'm very quick to tell you that the referees were bad, but they didn't affect the game. Tonight they affected the game. If they had called the game properly in the third period, Canadiens would have had at least 2 power plays in the third period. At least 2 power plays in the third period. It should have been a penalty on the cross-check by Achari on Gallagher, and it should have been a penalty on the hit on Slavkovsky going into the boards. And now we've got Slavkovsky, who had to go to the dressing room, and we'll have to wait and see whether or not he's going to miss games, whether he's got a concussion or some type of other injury. So again, I'm very, and those of you who know me and those of you who have been in my, here on Habs After Dark or in my lives on TikTok or anywhere else, that I'm very, very quick to admit when the referees are bad, but they don't affect the game. Or if they're good, which they typically aren't. They're not very good ever. But again, it's very rare that the refereeing is bad and affects the game. Tonight it affected the game. I think the Canadiens would have had, like I said, 2 power plays that could have made a difference in that third period, and they just blew it. They're terrible. Blandino and Hebert. I have no idea what you're doing. I don't think you have any idea what you're doing. I think you're clueless. I think you're out to lunch. And I think that you are absolutely embarrassing this league. And I don't typically blame the referees because I think this is what the referees are taught to do. This is what they were taught by the senior referees when they first came into the league, and this was how they were taught to referee. And I don't think they get any guidance from the NHL about how to properly operate and how to properly call a game. And there's no consistency from one refereeing group to another refereeing group. You go from one group that is calling every single thing, like we had on Thursday night, where, a player would literally rest his hand on the other guy's shoulder, and that's holding. The call on Arbor-Xhekaj at the beginning of the game, like the poor kid is trying to play the game and trying to be more disciplined, and he has his coaches coaching him and telling him how to do this and how to do that, and he's walking around on eggshells, petrified to make a mistake because he's just trying to play in the NHL, and he goes behind the net, and he he's stronger than his opponent, and his opponent goes down because he's a big strong kid. His opponent goes down, and the referees call him for this phantom holding call. Right, this phantom holding call. The other player is tying up his stick under his arm, and Xhekaj gets called for it. The poor guy is literally, his career is on the line right now because he's trying to learn to be able to play in the NHL. He's trying to learn the mental side of the game. He's trying to learn, how to think hockey and have a high hockey sense. And these referees are fucking him over. Like he's trying to be disciplined. He's trying to do his job. He's trying to be smart. You can see it. You can see how tentative he is out there because he's trying to be, he's trying not to hurt the team and he's trying to do the right thing. And these referees who don't have the first clue what they're doing are screwing him over. This 22-year-old kid who is, in every other respect is a great story because he made it to the NHL after not being drafted into junior hockey and not being drafted into the NHL and being, a kid from an immigrant family who, didn't really take up hockey, in the usual way like some kids do when they're, 3 and 4 years old. Like he came to hockey late and this kid who's a good story in every other way, but for whatever reason, the NHL referees, want to try and get in the way of that because they just don't have one friggin' clue about what they're doing. Anyways, that's my referee rant for the night. We can talk about that some more if you like. I think you'll probably want to talk about the Achari hit. But let's go back. Let's look at the comments, guys. I'm going to go all the way back. James Stars, what's up? You wanted to come by and tell you I feel the Habs played much better than they have in the past few games. I agree with you completely, James. It's kind of what I said. The refereeing and Gallagher and Slav hits, there you go. So, James was agreeing me long before I even said anything. This is commentary that was made at the very outset of the show tonight. This is commentary that was made, early on, Frank says, yes, we played better, but a loss is a loss. We need to beat teams like that. Yes, Frank likes to panic. I agree. A loss is a loss, and moral victories are only worth so much. But, this is a team in development, Frank. So I would remind you of that. I would remind you that this is a rebuild. So, moral victories do mean something at this stage. Do we want to lose? Absolutely not. We want them to win. But, again, it's not time to panic. I was thinking very much of you, Frank, when I opened up the show, when I talked about relax, calm down. The Habs did not play good tonight. I don't agree with you, NHL predictions. I mean, I do agree with you to an extent. I don't think they played good, but I don't think they played badly either. I think they played well enough to win tonight. Unfortunately, they didn't. But again, I'm not gonna sit here and say that they played badly because they didn't. I thought they could have been better. It's a game they should have won. They could have won. They had the opportunity to win. But again, I think they're dealing with a lot of sort of between the ears kind of stuff right now. Think about this, right? Think about what the Canadians are going through right now. Put it in this perspective. So tomorrow, all day tomorrow, through the entire day tomorrow, anytime you're walking, I want you to think about walking tomorrow, but I don't want your big toe to touch the ground. Whether it's through your shoe or barefoot or whatever, every time you walk tomorrow for the entire day, I want you to think and be conscious of your big toe can never touch the ground tomorrow. And then see how your day goes tomorrow. See how well you're able to, get around, how you're able to do, your work around the house, how you're able to, go to the grocery store, how you're able to drive your car, how you're able to do that. So see how it affects you when in the back of your mind, you're always being 100% conscious of that one little thing. And that's kind of what the Montreal Canadiens are doing right now, right? That's how they're playing hockey right now. They're playing hockey and they're thinking about all of these things that they're being taught, and it's it's not overriding, but it's sort of it's in their mind at all times. Right? So normally we just walk and we don't think about it, and we just, we go from here to there, and we don't really think about it. But if all of a sudden we have to think about, okay, well, now we have to walk, but our big toe can't touch the floor or can't touch the ground. We have to walk without using our big toe. Guess what? Now it becomes a little bit harder to walk, right? Because we're thinking about it, right? It's not just coming to us subconsciously. These guys are used to playing hockey by instinct. They're great hockey players. They've been great hockey players their entire life. Everywhere they've gone, they've been the best player in their team, in their league, for the most part. Now they're at an NHL level where not only they're not the best players around anymore, but now they're being asked, okay, well, now we want you to do things differently in the defensive zone. Now we want you to do things, in a certain way, right? And so it takes you a while to get accustomed to doing things that certain way and for it to, again, become an instinct for you. And that's what's happening with this team. That's part of the development of a young hockey team. Hunter asks the thoughts on the hit by Achari. Again, I don't think it was necessarily malicious. I don't think he intended to hurt Slavkovsky. But at the end of the day, he did. At the end of the day, he hit Slavkovsky in the head with his shoulder. And that's against the rules. And it's a penalty. Right? So we're the NHL right now is so concerned about these little ticky-tack penalties, right? If the stick comes parallel across the opposing player, it's hooking no matter what, right? If your stick gets up inside the hands of the opposing player, that's slashing no matter what. If your stick gets into the skates of the opposing player and he goes down, that's a tripping no matter what. So we're all caught up in these like soft little calls, but now we're like ignoring the real things that could hurt people, right? We're ignoring, things like hits to the head, but yet we're very much focused on, these chintzy little holding penalties and these, unintentional trip. Like it's just, they've just lost the plot. The refereeing in the NHL and officiating, it's just lost the plot. Period 3 was the best for Montreal. I agree with you, James. I thought they played better in the third period. I thought they played okay in the first, but the third I think was definitely the best. every team are the best at third period. That's not a true statement. NHL predictions. I think that's false. I can't tell if the Achari hit on Slafsky was dirty or not. I don't know that it was intentional. I think that the hit on Brendan Gallagher earlier was certainly just as dirty. It definitely was a head contact, which is a penalty. It's a penalty. If you make direct contact with a player's head, that's a penalty. Period. In the NHL. Now there are some things that you look at that might justify it, but again, it's a penalty. Again, we draw the distinction between dirty and illegal, right? Something can be illegal, but not dirty, and something can be dirty and not illegal. In that particular case, I think it was illegal but not dirty, in my view. By the rules, I feel like it's not a clean hit. Yeah, I agree with you. It's not a clean hit. But again, there's a difference between clean and dirty and legal and illegal, Aiden. Something can be against the rules but not really be that dirty because you didn't do it on purpose, you didn't do it intentionally. But something could be legal within the rules, but maybe, by virtue of the timing of it and what part of the game you did it, it could be dirty. Only dirty thing was Jack Guy sticking his knee out when the game ended. Womp womp. Cry me a river, Bradley. Again, it wasn't dirty. If you want to say, he was getting Achari's attention. It worked. They weren't moving at high speed. Again, Bradley's probably the same guy who thought that Cedric Perret didn't stick his leg out. So, Bradley's just here probably to troll. Anyway, I know it's a rebuild, but it's getting harder and harder to watch. If you know it's a rebuild, it wouldn't be getting harder and harder to watch because you kind of would understand a little bit what's going on, Jason, right? Let's try and get to the new comments here. McPhilly, I think that's you, Hexy, is it not? You think the Habs rebuild is hard to watch? You should try. Oh, yes, it is, Hexy, for sure. And watching that mess, at least your prospects look good. Yeah, it's frustrating, I think, for sure, to watch this rebuild. But again, if you remind yourself that it is a rebuild, and if you can sort of watch the game with a view to understanding what's going on with the team and what they're trying to achieve, and if you can understand what's going on, right? Like I said, think about walking around tomorrow without your big toe. I know that sounds kind of weird, and sometimes I say weird shit that people don't really understand. But think about it. Just tomorrow, everywhere you go for the entire day, or maybe just for the morning or the afternoon, walk, but be conscious of not letting your big toe touch the ground, and see how much harder it becomes for you to just do the normal day-to-day things that you do, things that you always have taken for granted. And then also be conscious of how maybe after a little while it starts to get easier. Right? It starts to get easier. And that's kind of what the Canadians are doing. They're being asked to have these new thoughts and these new ways of doing things that they've done their entire lives. They've done these things their entire lives a certain way, and now they're being asked to do them just a little bit differently. Right? Usually I don't like blaming game on the refs, but sometimes you just have to. Yeah, I rarely do it, Hunter. I rarely do it. I will say that the refs are bad, but it's not often that I blame them for a win or a loss or whatever. But tonight, I definitely, anybody who watched that third period has to, you have to concede that there was some degree of, Achari, the Gallagher hit. It couldn't have been more obvious. It couldn't have been more obvious. I don't get it. I just don't understand it. I hope they don't lose too many games in a row and think that it's okay to lose games because they're a rookie team. Again, I don't quite know how to explain this stuff to you any way differently, Frank. Every night it seems to be the same thing. Every time I'm live on TikTok, every time I'm live on here, again, they're not making excuses because they're a rookie team, right? So don't think about it that way. They're losing games because they're learning how to do things the right way, and they're learning how to do things that will help them in the long run. And it's not even that. It's they're not capable of doing some of those things just yet, and that's why they're losing, right? They're losing because they don't have the mental mindset yet to be a team that competes on a consistent basis. And yes, if we don't see that start to develop, as this year progresses, then it's going to be a problem. Right? It's going to be a problem if we're sitting here in February and they're still losing games because they don't show up or they don't play a full 60 minutes or or they don't, they don't have the drive to, to be a winning team. Like they need to create habits, right? Like, some good points made in the Basu and Godin Notebook podcast today. Like if you listen to that, actually, I don't always agree with them, but I thought there were some really good points where, they had a situation going into last weekend's games where, they had just lost to the Rangers and it wasn't a great game. And, they had some hard coaching and, they'd focused in on their D-zone coverage, and then they won 2 games in a row, right? They won against Philly and they won against St. Louis, I think that's what it was, St. Louis and Philly. They won back-to-back games, right? And but they weren't able to take the momentum of those 2 wins and carry it over, right? They can't. So, and that's kind of like that mindset and developing those habits that you don't just play great for one game. You develop a habit where that becomes the way you play all the time. And so then they fell back into their bad habits against the Kraken, which, you might argue was neither here nor there, because I don't know that they really did fall into their bad habits against the Kraken. I think that was more of an isolated incident where the goalie just completely let them down. But again, they didn't, their goalie let them down, but they certainly could have played differently and played better, to pick up their goalie, right? And that's the kind of thing that you expect from, a good team that, works and helps each other. So teaching a young rebuilding team to play a full 60 minutes of hockey every game is tough, and it does take time. Yeah, I've said this before. I've even said it at the beginning of last year. Consistency is one of the last things that a good hockey team develops. Like, think of yourselves this way, guys, as Canadian fans. Think about if you were in Chicago right now. Think if you were a Chicago fan, right? Your team is also rebuilding. But instead of rebuilding the way the Montreal Canadiens are rebuilding, the Chicago Blackhawks, who are doing no better than Montreal this year, by the way, went out and signed a bunch of middle-aged free agents. They signed a bunch of free agents who are in their 30s, right? So not only are they losing, and losing as badly or worse than Montreal has been losing in the last couple days, their future is not developing right now. Because all of their young players, right, like where we have, Jack Guy, Struble, Gooley, Slavkovsky, Kapanen, Heineman, where we have those guys, getting better and becoming NHLers and learning at the NHL level, those guys aren't even in the league. Those guys are, down in the American League. And so they're watching their team lose just as badly as we are with, like, Craig Smith and, these middle-aged, mediocre players. Is there any truth to Patrick Laine coming back sooner? I don't know. I don't think there is. I haven't heard that he's even been on the ice. I suspect we'll hear when he starts skating. I think the original diagnosis or the original prognosis was that he would be out for 2 to 3 months, which would bring you sort of towards Christmas time, I guess, mid-December to mid-January. But, I don't think that they should be rushing him back by any means, but we'll see. Yeah, again, all of these moves that they made are not the moves of a rebuilding team. Hunter, you've heard me say that a million times, right? Like, you're not rebuilding if you're signing 30-plus-year-old free agents. And so for me, as a Canadiens fan, I'm extremely grateful and happy that my team is not rebuilding in that way. Because, frankly, I don't think that's a rebuild. You can call it whatever you want, I guess, and the words are all just semantics. But at the end of the day, if you're out signing Foligno, well, they already had Foligno, but if you're out signing, somebody can look up exactly who they signed, but, I can do that. Give me a second here. Blackhawks. Hawks roster. Stand by. So, like, this year, the Blackhawks were Pat Maroon, right? Like, they went out and signed Pat Maroon. They went out and signed Ilya Mikheyev. They went out and signed Craig Smith, Teuvo Teravainen. Not a bad choice, I guess, Teravainen. But again, a guy who is, over 30 years old. TJ Brody, Alec Martinez, Connor Murphy. Alec Martinez is 37 years old. Is that right? He's born in 87? Yeah. Like Craig Smith. Craig Smith is 35 years old. Patrick Maroon is 36 years old. What are you doing? So would you rather be the Montreal Canadiens, who are struggling, with a young team and a young group of guys who are working to become a team and develop sort of the mental aspects of the game, or would you rather be watching those guys lose every night? I'll take this anytime. Yeah, the Wings are doing the same thing, right? The Wings got a feeling like they had a chance to make the playoffs, so they abandoned any semblance of a rebuild and started signing a bunch of veterans. What is Gary doing with the NHL? I love watching hockey, but all these useless calls the refs call. Gary Bettman doesn't have anything really to do with the refereeing in the league. Fans typically overestimate Gary Bettman's influence. Gary Bettman is a spokesperson for the NHL owners. He doesn't really act on his own in any real way. He doesn't do anything unless he's told to do it by the ownership. What's up, Daniel? Connor Murphy was already there. You're correct, Daniel. So was Foligno. So was Taylor Hall. They had a couple of veteran guys that were already there also. But yeah, Gary Bettman isn't doing this. This is the ownership that's doing this, right? So if you want to blame anybody, you blame the owners. If the owners had any real feeling that the refereeing, needed to be changed, they could definitely, do something about it. But I don't believe they do. But it's not a Gary Bettman thing, right? It's not a Gary Bettman, Gary Bettman's not, doing the right things. Frank, well, hopefully we end up being a little better than last year towards the end of the season. Yeah, well, again, I think we're not any worse really than we were last season. I think we've lost a couple games here in a fashion that wasn't that typical last year. I can't remember whether, how many blowouts the Canadiens would have been on the wrong end of last year. I mean, obviously last year was, very much about close games and overtime losses and things like that. But again, the other thing you got to keep in mind too is this team hasn't been healthy. They haven't had the same lineup for 2 or 3 or 4 games in a row yet. Every night there's somebody missing. Doc's missing for a little bit, or sorry, no, not Doc. Laine's obviously out. Goulet was out for a couple games. Slavkovsky was out for a couple games. Now he looks like he might be out again for a couple games. And, all of it. So when you're a young team and every night you're playing with different line mates, right? Like, when's the last time they played 2 or 3 games in a row where they had the same lines and the same players out there? So, yeah. So, again, I guess getting back to the original message, guys, it's not panic time. I mean, I know we love to panic, and Montreal Canadiens fans are famous for panicking. But I think if you take a minute to think about it and to understand what's happening and what's going on with this team and what's coming down the pipe, right? The prospects who might yet still be coming, hopefully they all continue to develop the way they have. There's obviously no guarantee that all of them will, but, if, 2 or 3 of them do, then, you're adding another, group to the lineup. Laine obviously is going to make a difference when he comes back. Hage and Sam Harris are both having really good seasons in the NCAA, as is Jacob Fowler. Over in Russia, you've got Konyushkov, and you've got Volokin, and you've got Ivan Demidov. You've got, guys down in the American League who are doing well. You've got Owen Beck, and you've got Joshua Roy. You've got, Florian Jacki, and you've got Luke Tuck. You've got, these guys who all stand a chance to, be a part of the Montreal Canadiens. Logan Mailloux, Reinbacher hopefully will be a guy who gets in that discussion at some point, when he gets healthy. So again, when you're panicking and when you're ready to jump off a cliff, or you're ready to, drive your car through a brick wall because you're frustrated with the Montreal Canadiens and you can't stand it or whatever, think about what's coming down the road and what they're building towards and what they're working towards. We are less than 2.5 years into the rebuild. Rebuilds don't take 2 years, right? Despite what, so many of the 60%ers amongst the Montreal Canadiens fans will tell you, this rebuild's taken too long. We need to start winning now, and we can't do. Listen, rebuilds take 4 or 5 years. If you want to put a time limit on them at all, which I don't. I don't think they have a time limit. A rebuild ends when it ends. It doesn't, it doesn't have a beginning and it doesn't have an end. So it might have a beginning, but it's certainly, it doesn't have an end that, it ends when it ends. What do I think about players fighting after a clean hit? I never understood. You're stepping up for a teammate. Yeah, I don't understand it either, Hunter. And again, I've talked about it before. I mean, for me, I think this idea that you have to jump on a guy sort of within 3 seconds of him throwing a dirty hit is kind of silly. I think I think you could probably be a far more effective in gaining retribution on a player, if you take the time to be a little bit more considerate about it. Right? I think the example was on the Trouba hit we saw the other night. We talked about it, right? Like Mike Matheson felt compelled to try and go and jump on Jacob Trouba immediately after that hit, which is great. That's what tradition tells you he needs to do. But honestly, I don't think that Mike Matheson really put any level of fear into Jacob Trouba, and I don't think that Jacob Trouba felt any, real level of retribution from Mike Matheson, as a result of that. I mean, in fact, Mike Matheson got an extra 2-minute penalty, and Trouba got nothing. So, Trouba grabbed a hold of Matheson and wrestled him to the ground. Quite honestly, probably could have done more damage if he'd gotten his hands loose. And then Matheson went to the penalty box and Trouba was back out for the next shift. Whereas if Matheson had just sort of skated away and skated over to Justin Barron and just sort of and then they waited and let Jackeye or Struble or somebody else take care of it, either with a fight or a big hit or otherwise, I think it's far more effective as a deterrent and a form of retribution. So it resembles the Edmonton Oilers when they were drafting all those first-round picks. It took 5 to 6 years before they were really good. Yeah, I think that's probably a decent comparison, Frank. I think it's a little bit different. I don't think that the Oilers engaged in what we would traditionally call a full rebuild. But you're right. You can have players, you can have really good players, and then you can have, right now, I think I said this the other night, I don't think individually there's a lot of issue with a lot of the players on the Montreal Canadiens, right? Like, you might point to a couple guys who are just playing not that great, but individually, for the most part, they're playing okay. Suzuki's playing okay, Caulfield's playing okay, Slavkovsky's playing okay. Who else? Certainly Evans, Anderson, and Gallagher are all playing okay. Kapanen is, playing all right. He's young and, he's in his first 10 games in the NHL and he's not playing awesome all the time. Heineman's certainly playing okay. So that's 9 of your 12 forwards, all of whom, are playing decently as individuals. Right? They're not playing horribly, but as a team, they're not playing well. Right? They're not playing well as a team. They're not playing well as a group. Defensively, Gouli's playing okay. Gouli's playing well. Matheson's playing okay. Savard's been a little bit up and down, but for the most part, he's been okay. Lane Hudson, of course, has been pretty good. He's had a couple of games where his defensive, he's going through some growing pains on the defensive side of things. Struble's been all right. Barron and Jackeye, I think, have struggled at times. Mayu struggled a little bit when he was up. But again, there's 4 of your 7 defensemen that are playing okay, but they're just not playing well as a team. And that's kind of what they're working on right now. That's, they're not working on their skills. They're not working on, those types of things. They're working on doing the right things at the right time. They've got the tools now. Now they need to learn how to use those tools. And, they need to learn how to use those tools at the appropriate time, right? You don't use a hammer to screw in a nail. Right? You learn how to use the right tools at the right time and to make the right decisions and to make those types of things. Bertuzzi only has 2 more teams to play for, and he'll compete the original 6 run. Yes. It helps, though, that the Oilers draft generational talent. McDavid, that speeds up the rebuild dramatically. Yeah, it does. But, I mean, they had first overall draft picks outside of McDavid too, right? And they didn't always pick the right guy, and, you never know. I mean, generational talents, you typically don't know that until, well, I guess McDavid was kind of a little bit, they kind of knew what he was when he was drafted, but that's crazy if he completed that, get his head. Well, yeah, I can say that I'm very hopeful, Hexy, that's hopefully not going to happen. Anything else, guys? Anything else you guys want to talk about? I'm trying to think if there's anything else in that game that stood out to me that I feel really compelled to talk about. I'm just looking through my notes here, guys. Again, I think it was a pretty bit of a nothing game for both teams. I don't think either team really put forward anything real special. Yeah, I mean, I said it right here. Like, Arbor Jackeye looks like he has the right approach early on, right? So I wrote that note right after the Bunting situation. Early in the game, one of the first whistles of the game, Bunting goes hard to the net, and Jackeye sends him the message that that's not going to happen all night. But he does it in a way where he doesn't, put himself at any, in any real jeopardy of getting a penalty. And then, like, how much longer later was it? It was, 8 minutes into the first period. Here's what I wrote: Jackeye for holding at 8:39. Terrible call. What even is holding anymore? Poor kid is trying his best and is being penalized for being stronger than his opponents. What more can he do? Like, that's what I wrote. And, I mean, I stand by that. I mean, the guy is, like, literally, like you saw him. Like, he actually asked the referee to come over to the penalty box and very calmly, like, not in a what the hell are you calling kind of way. It was kind of like, what did I do wrong? Tell me what I did wrong to get a penalty there. Right? Like, he's literally just doing anything he possibly can. The Leafs lost to the Blues. I did see that, Hunter. That's 2 in a row to the Blues. Craig Berube's old team. Well, yeah, one would hope so, Aiden. That would be a perfect case scenario as far as Dvorak's concerned, right? Might be able to get her 6th rounder. Well, again, that's better than nothing, I suppose. Montreal won the Stanley Cup with all-rookie team in 1986. Well, no, they didn't. They didn't have an all-rookie team, I don't think. I mean, I know they didn't have an all-rookie team. They weren't a particular. I mean, maybe they were a little bit young. Let's have a look and see who was on that What you said, the 86 team or the 93 team? Yeah, you said 86. So let's see who was on the 86 team. So the 1985-86 Montreal Canadiens. So Mats Naslund, he was 25. He was the leading scorer with 110 points that year. Bobby Smith, he was 27. He was their second leading scorer that year with 86 points. Larry Robinson, he was 34 that year. He was third on the team in scoring. Arguably, in my opinion, one of the 3 best defensemen of all time, by the way. Shel Dahlin, he was young. That was his big year. Shel Dahlin looked like he was going to be an NHL superstar, but his career kind of fizzled out. Guy Carbonneau was 25. Ryan Walter was 27. Bob Gainey was 31. Mike McPhee was 25. Mario Tremblay was 28. Stéphane Richer was young. He was 19. That was his rookie year. Chris Nyland was 27. Chelios was 23. So I don't think I would agree with you, Frank, that they won with an all-rookie team in '86. Yeah, I don't think you're. Again, that's me. So there's a good insight, guys, on how I sort of argue when it comes to. So when I hear somebody make an argument that sounds like it doesn't quite make sense to me, I look it up. Right? Why I don't understand why other people don't do that. Like why would Frank, I'm not trying to pick on you here, but like you could have done what I just did. You just saw it took me like a minute to look that up to find out that, the 86 team just isn't an all rookie team. So anyways, it's just, you don't typically see examples of teams that are that young having a ton of success. They need time to develop. They need time to get better. They need time to learn how to be professionals. They need time to learn how to play the game properly. I liked him last year, but Matheson has been hard to watch this season. I think Matheson gets a bit of a bad rap because he plays so much. And when you play that much against, typically against the other team's best lines, you're going to make mistakes. And certainly that play at the end of the game, when they were trying to, get an advantage with the empty net and all that, it looked really, really bad. But the thing is, when Mike Matheson makes one or two or three bad plays, or, especially if he does, something on the power play that people don't like, they kind of impugn his entire game. But, I mean, the guy's killing penalties. He's playing 25 minutes a night. He's, on the power play. He's going to make some mistakes. The Canadians had 9 goalies that season. Well, let's check. I didn't look at that, but you could be right. I see here they only had 3 goalies that played that year. Am I missing something? I see Doug Sotart, Patrick Roy, and Steve Penny. Who are you looking? Where are you looking at it, Hexy? Patrick Roy, I believe that was not Patrick Roy's first. Yeah, it was Patrick Roy's first year. Patrick Roy, yeah, and Steve Penny. Steve Penny, there's a blast from the past. For all the old school Montreal Canadiens fans, you'll remember Steve Penny for the 1980. Was it the 84 playoffs that he had such a good run? Pennies from Heaven? What year was it that he had such a great run? 83, 84. Yeah, which is crazy when you think about it. Like, let's look at this for a second. So Patrick Roy in 1986. Okay, here's trivia question for you guys who aren't already looking it up. This shows you how different the NHL was back then. Patrick Roy, everyone remembers Patrick Roy. He won the Conn Smythe. He was, the greatest thing since sliced bread that year, 1986. Do you know what his goals against, his save percentage was that year in the regular season? .875. He had an .875 save percentage that year in the regular season. That's all good, Hexy. I would have remembered that. 9 different goalies. Different time, different league, different game. Yeah, absolutely. Matheson does play a lot, but he's out of his element in that role. I disagree, Aiden. I disagree. Do I think that Mike Matheson is playing 25 minutes a game on a Stanley Cup contending team? Absolutely not. But on this team, I think he's well within his element to do that. I think that he's steady in, most aspects of the game. He obviously, he makes mistakes. I think that he, for a guy who, typically is viewed as an offense-first defenseman, it's actually kind of impressive that he is able to do what he does for 25 minutes a game. Better suited as a number 3 D-man? Well, I mean, if you're on a Stanley Cup contending team, yeah, I think you're right. I don't think Mike Matheson is a number 1 defenseman, on the Edmonton. Well, I mean, maybe on the Edmonton Oilers he is, but on the Florida Panthers, let's say. It was $875 that regular season, Patrick Waugh. I don't know what it was in the playoffs. I suppose I could find out by looking at the right website. Patrick Roy Elite Prospects. I suspect his save percentage was a little bit better that year in the playoffs than it was in the regular season. One would certainly hope. So his playoff save percentage in 85, 86, of course, when you're on Elite Prospects, you're going to get 73 pop-ups. You bugger. Let's go. Where is his playoff? Come on. Let's get some more pop-ups on here, Elite Prospects. Let's see if you can do a little bit more advertising. Where is his playoff stats? Why do they not give you his playoff stats? I don't get that. Anyways, I'm not looking all that stuff up right now, guys. We're chatting. Claude Lemieux's playoff numbers or something else. Yeah. Claude Lemieux is one of those guys. You just want to, again, when we talk about depth guys, right? We talk about guys who you need to have on your team if you want to win the Stanley Cup. Claude Lemieux was the prototype for a long time. I remember, like that 86 year, he scored, was it, I can't remember if it was in the first round or the second round against the Hartford Whalers. He had an overtime goal in that 86. I remember watching that on TV. We used to, believe it or not, this is how much the world has changed. So I'm sitting here right now on a laptop with an iPad tethered to it over here. It's actually over here, but it's over here. An iPad tethered to it. I've got my big screen TV up here, which is about to shut off, and I don't want it to. Stand by. I've got a big screen TV up here that I'm watching the game on, and I'm broadcasting to essentially the entire world, from my laptop with a microphone here that's plugged into my laptop. When I was 12 years old, I would be in my bedroom watching the game on a 12-inch black and white TV. What's happening here? Are you guys having any issues with the stream? I'm getting a notification from YouTube that there's an issue there. Is everything okay on your end? If everything's okay, give me a thumbs up, guys. I'm getting a message here from YouTube that something's going on here. Everything's good on your end? All right. So when I was a kid, I'd be watching the game in my bedroom. Now, we had another TV. I'm not going to pretend that I lived in the ice ages or anything like that. We had another TV, but our main TV was like a 28-inch color TV that was in our living room, but I didn't always, because I had a sister who didn't like watching hockey, and because I didn't always get the TV, I would watch the games in my bedroom. And I remember watching that game, Claude Lemieux, 1986. I was 13 years old. And Claude Lemieux coming around the net and backhanding it over, I want to say Mike Liut, but I'm not sure it was Mike Liut, over his shoulder for a win. So, that's me, old guy. The Habs are the best in history, first team in the league basically in 24 Stanley Cups because the team is young It doesn't ruin the history of the Habs. Player's the best right now. Yeah, again, I think I'm going to probably try and end things here. The picture will pause for a second once in a while. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's doing that. I'll have to get to the bottom of it. This is the first time I've ever faced anything like this. It says something about YouTube is not receiving. It says YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. So I'm not sure if it's got something to do with my frames per second or something that's going on with my OBS Studio. But anyways, that's just about it anyways. I appreciate you guys. Again, it's not time to panic. Just relax. Canadiens fans, it's going to be fine. If you're really feeling shitty and you feel like the end of the world is coming and that the Montreal Canadiens are, they're ruining your life and that you just can't deal with it anymore, go and watch, Jacob Fowler play a game at Boston College. Turn that on. Find a way to watch that. Watch Ivan Demidov play a game in the KHL. Watch Michael Hage play for the Michigan Wolverines. You'll feel better. Watch Tyler Thorpe play a game for the Vancouver Giants. These are things that are coming. Go watch the Laval Rocket play a game. They're on TV. That's easy to find. If you can get RDS, you can watch the Laval Rocket. There's good things coming with this team, and they're learning to be a better team. They're learning how to play as a team. They're learning how to develop good habits. They're learning how to play the game properly. They're learning to think hockey. They're learning to think as a team. So don't panic. Don't lose your mind. Don't be afraid. Yeah, it's frustrating watching them lose 3 games in a row. I get it. It's hard to watch them play and lose 8-2. Like tonight while I was watching the game at the end when, I was hoping they would get that goal to tie it up and Mike Matheson turned over the puck. Yeah, I cursed at the TV. Everybody does it. But again, just take a deep breath. Think about it. Think about what's going on here. You're 2 years into a rebuild. We've got good, smart people running the situation, running the show. We've got good young hockey players on our team who've shown skilled, and they've shown they're capable of playing in the NHL, and it's just a matter of the team putting it all together and getting it to the point where they can, figure it all out and start playing, consistently like a team. So thank you, Hunter. I will see you as well. It is always nice chatting with you also. Another year, more pieces. You guys are doing it right. I certainly think so as well. Hexy, it's going to be frustrating. There's going to be ups and downs. I don't know what people thought. The reason why most teams don't do rebuilds is because they can be frustrating, because the fans don't like watching it sometimes. But the reality is a rebuild done right is usually worth waiting for. So they panic from losing money watching the game TV and live in person. I don't know what you mean by that, NHL predictions, but they are not looking any better. Well, they are looking better, Jason. It's just you're not looking in the right places. They're working on different things, Jason. Look at it closely. Don't just look at it, through glazed eyes. They're not lacking skill big time. So consider turning down video settings. Okay, well, I'll have to fix that. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, Jason. Yeah, I think I don't think you're paying attention, Jason. If that's what you're seeing and that's what you're thinking, they're not lacking skill big time. I think the skill is there. What they're lacking is the mindset, and they're lacking the the cohesiveness of a team, right? Individually, these guys are playing well. Like I said, I would say, for the most part, they're all playing well. It's just they're not playing well as a team. They're not putting out a consistent effort as a group. Yeah, again, Jason, I would invite you to support those arguments with facts. I don't think that you'd be able to, but you certainly are welcome to do that. I don't know that we'll do that tonight because we don't really have the time for it all. But if you want to come back another time and talk about players with skill, and Doc and Newhook have been horrible. They haven't. It's just not factually accurate, Jason. But again, if you want to support your arguments with facts, then I'm happy. I'm all ears. But if you're just going to come in here and just sort of, run off at the mouth without providing, watch anyone that covers the team. So that's not a fact, Jason. Provide me with a fact. Provide me with a fact that there are only 5 or 6 skilled players on the Montreal Canadiens. Provide me with the facts to support that argument. Okay. Provide me with the facts. So who exactly are you talking about, Jason? Give me the names of the people who cover the team that have been less than impressed with Newhook. Okay. Newhook's not having a great start to the season. Agreed. But does that mean he's not a skilled hockey player? What about Jake Evans? How's he been doing this year? What about Brendan Gallagher and Josh Anderson? How have they been doing this year? How have Caulfield, Slavkovsky, and Suzuki been doing this year? Again, how's Caden Gooley been doing this year? How's Lane Hudson been doing this year? How are Mike Matheson and David Savard doing this year? This is a team that's in development. They're getting better. I get, Jason, that you're not really here to have a real discussion or an argument. I believe, I'm not sure. If you're the guy who I think you are, I think you're a Leafs fan who's here just to be argumentative, but I could be wrong on that. But again, I would invite you to actually pay attention a little bit to what's going on with this team and what the plan is for this team. And, listen to what the coaches say and what the GMs say and what the players are saying about what they're building. And maybe you'd understand it a little bit better. Well, again, I've now asked you 4 times to provide some facts to back up your arguments, Jason. But, you're just not quite able to do it. I mean, you don't think I watched the team, but yet I've just spent the last hour reviewing the game with my notes and talking specifics about the game, recounting the goals and the penalties of the game, but I did that all without watching the game, Jason. They among the very worst in shots for and against in the league. Recipe for disaster. Habs fan, but not delusional. Well, you are. I mean, you're not delusional. I don't know what you are. You just aren't paying attention. I mean, if you're basing your opinion on shots for and against, then I'd invite you suggest that you might want to just dig a little bit deeper than that, Jason. I think that focusing on the shots for and against column in the stat sheet is probably not where you necessarily are going to get the best information from. So anyways, all that to say that's just about it for now. I guess if your name is Jason Teal, you can panic all you want, because, there's not really anything I can say to change your mind. But if you want to really be thoughtful about this team and think about what really is going on, I wouldn't panic at this point. They are working on things. There is an aspect to this game that, goes beyond just the X's and O's, and it's not easy. And, in a perfect world, they would be learning this stuff a little bit, more easily. They would be learning it a little bit, more quickly, but they're not. And they're young, and they'll get it. They'll figure out the systems. They'll figure out, the mental and the mindset aspect of the game. And it will come eventually, perhaps not quick enough for somebody like Jason Teal. But it is what it is. Not everybody's going to understand what the rebuild really means and what's trying to be, what the team is trying to accomplish. And, that's part of the problem with a rebuild, right? Not everybody is going to understand it. Not everybody is going to appreciate it. Not everybody is going to be patient with it the way it needs you to be patient. Like, patience is the key aspect to a rebuild. And, if a rebuild took 2 years and everything was going to be, rainbows and puppy dogs, then everybody would rebuild. It wouldn't be a big deal, but it's not. There are hard times in a rebuild. There are setbacks. There are times when you're going to get frustrated with it, and that's kind of what's going on right now. But again, if you take a step back and you actually make an effort to understand what a rebuild is and what the team is actually trying to do, then, you'll actually figure it out. Again, Jason, you're more than welcome to be here. You're more than welcome to participate in the conversation. But if you're going to be an asshole, you're not going to be here. So, if you want to have a conversation, again, I've invited you now at least a half dozen times to provide some factual evidence to support your positions that you've offered, and you haven't done it yet. So if you're going to start getting personal and you're going to start doing personal attacks, you can go and do it somewhere else, because you're not going to do it here, okay? This isn't TikTok. You're not going to come in and troll and be a complete asshole about it. So, govern yourself accordingly. And then you can, if you, like I said, if you want to be here, the choice will be completely up to you. Okay? I'm happy to have discussions with everybody, whether you agree with me or disagree with me. But, you're not going to come in and act like a complete dickhead in the live and ruin the experience for other people. Right? You're allowed to disagree with me. I have no problem with that. You're allowed to have an opinion. I have no problem with that. But you can't provide any, I've asked you a number of times to give me, facts and evidence that support your argument. You can't do it. Good idea, Jason. Good idea. Retract that statement. In any event, again, I don't want to end it on that note, guys. Jason, I'm going to suggest that you just, clam it for the rest of the live, because, you're not doing yourself any favors. And I want to end the live here. So that's it for tonight, guys. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming by. My name is Devin. This is Recliner Sports. This is Habs After Dark. We do the show every Montreal Canadiens game, 15 minutes after the game ends. We go live. I do a brief synopsis of the game. We talk about, some of the issues that came up during the game, and then we have a conversation in the comments, which tonight was quite fun and enjoyable. For the most part, but I do enjoy it. Even sort of the negative side of it, I do enjoy it. That's 2 nights in a row where we had a pretty good turnout. Thank you, Hunter. Thank you, NHL Predictions. Thank you, Frank. Who else was in here? Hexy was in here. Thank you, James. Thank you. Who else? Hunter, I already said. Yeah. So Aiden was in earlier. So thank you all, guys, for participating. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for being a part of all this. I really appreciate it. Have a great night. And again, 2 things. One, remember to try and walk around tomorrow without letting your big toe touch the floor. And think about how hard that is, how hard it is to do everything in your life, your day-to-day activities, how hard that is to do when you actually have to physically think about how you're walking. And don't panic. Just relax. It'll be Sunday tomorrow. You can sleep in. You can get up. You can have some eggs and bacon and a coffee. You can watch the Formula One race. Just take a deep breath. Relax. Everything's going to be fine. Thank you very much, guys. We'll see you next time. This is Habs After Dark. Devin Maxwell. This is me. I'm signing out. Have a great night. Peace out.
Hoffman, Monahan parked in front, docks a Caulfield, fires, scores!
You are about to enter Habs After Dark with Recliner Sports.